You might say weather started it all. When floods hit Sacramento Valley in 1955, KCRA realized the impact a local news station could have.
We will be going on with continuous flood watch coverage.
The storm surge is going through right now.
From there, weather became a touchstone of KCRA's coverage.
I did weather from 1969 to 1979.
Could begin to affect the weather over the weekend, probably Saturday night or Sunday.
I loved it. It was exciting, it was fun. We innovated. We had the Valley's first pollen reports, the first pollution reports.
Today's PSI was 118. That's in the unhealthy category.
My first station when I first started working in television was 1983 in Portland, Maine. And we had those glass boards that we would literally paint on. We paint cold fronts, we paint numbers and all that sort of thing.
It's a total revolution. When I look at what they have available, I can only wish we had it back then, but we did the best we could. I mean, we had hand-drawn maps.
And once again, KCRA is at the front of one of those firsts.
I got here in 1991, late 1991. KCRA had purchased, but not yet installed, the first Doppler radar that was going to be installed west of the Rockies. Nobody else west of the Rockies had a Doppler radar. KCRA puts it on the air.
The heaviest rain is currently taking place in the foothills.
One of the things that we found that we had to do was to educate people what they were seeing. In terms of light green means light rain, dark green means heavier rain, yellow, red, what do the colors mean?
As quickly as weather technology changes, weather continues to be at the forefront of viewers' minds and KCRA's coverage.
During the time that I was here, 1980 to 2000, we had some of the biggest floods ever. We haven't had any bigger since. You know, the 86 floods, 92 and the 95, we had some of the biggest snowstorms.
I'm standing on the balcony of a home in Serene Lake. I've climbed up mounds of snow that go up to the second-story windows of homes and stood next to the roof and go, look at all this snow. There have been other times when I've tried to climb up the snowbank and live on television, not been so successful.
The first was in 1995. I was working mornings at the time, and we'd had heavy rain overnight, and we were showing it on Doppler. Showed this area of rain. It was steady from Elk Grove through Roseville. This area, this line just didn't move. Then he got out to Roseville, out by Kirby Creek, and all we saw were rooftops. And my jaw dropped, because here were people that were being taken out of their homes. I remember they're on the back of a big flatbed. They were taking people out of the neighborhood because the creek rose so fast, and we didn't know. Roseville had stream gauges there, but we didn't know.
The biggest one that still comes to my mind was the floods of 1997, January, New Year's Day. We knew there was a storm coming. We knew there was going to be some heavy rain. We were in special NBC programming.
We'll get to the football game in just a few minutes. The heavier rain during the nighttime hours did cause some localized street flooding.
And I recall at one point getting on the phone with the news director at the time and saying, I think we need to do a little bit more here. And we had one more little 3-minute cut in to do.
And there are mudslides on the highway in yards.
I'll never forget this. He said, well, why don't you just make it open-ended and we'll see how it goes.
Here, a motorist underestimated how deep and fast the water was rising.
So we started to do this little 3-minute update, and 2.5, 3 days later, we were still on the air.
A gas station with torrents of water pouring through.
We don't have Google Maps. We're trying to convey what it is we're looking at. So what I did have was, on our radar system, we had a mapping system. So I started working with our helicopter guy, and we just did this impromptu on the air. By way of railroad tracks and other landmarks that are sticking out of the water, we were able to show what was underwater and what was out of water.
We saw him sitting there forlornly just out on the rooftop.
And through it all, one image stood out from all of the others. Video of a dog stranded on the roof of a home in a flooded orchard north of Sacramento. It would turn out to be a story with a happy ending, thanks to KCRA.
And of course, the happiest moment was when Rodeo the dog, who was stranded on top of a house, was rescued by our own helicopter pilot, Michael Kidd, and photographer, Ron Middlecoff. And this is on live TV. It was a wonderful moment in an otherwise pretty tense 3 days in Sacramento.
Hi, well, how you doing? How you doing?
It was remarkable coverage. It was unexpected in terms of what the storm brought. It was unexpected in what we were able to deliver. But I think really as journalists and as members of the community, we really excelled at public service. It's one of the proudest things I've ever done.
We're looking actually over west, much west of the Chico-Durham area.
Dan Shively's next to the last day. You know, one of our legendary helicopter pilots, Dan Shively, it's his next to the last day. Sometime in the 5 to 6 o'clock hour, Dan finds a tornado. So we have a tornado live on the ground. It was basically in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't in a populated area, thank goodness, but to have these stunning pictures of a tornado from Shively on his next to the last day, coming right after Oprah, it was just one of those days that I was both nervous, excited. It was an interesting day. My training is all in weather forecasting, and you know, I'm used to looking at things like storms coming in and wind and temperatures and that sort of thing. But fire, I've had to educate myself on fire since coming to Northern California, and it's been quite a learning experience.
There have been instances where we have been standing so close to the fire that as you're talking, you start to feel the heat and you look and you're like, oh my goodness, we need to move.
Flames are all around.
The way that the weather works into it in terms of wind.
The wind is coming in off the delta and it is really, really feeding this fire, and it is blowing embers everywhere.
And you never take it for granted. I mean, once you've seen those sort of pictures and to see the way the weather can impact people in a devastating way, you can never take it for granted. You can never take a situation lightly.
We're going to get you up to date on all of what's going on in Northern California related to the heavy weather that went through last night.
It doesn't matter if it's one home, one person's backyard, or an entire neighborhood that might be impacted. Somebody's going to be impacted by the weather that's going to happen, and you have to address their concerns.